and then you will come down for the contest. If you are going to that, you need a grade check, okay, and I need to see it by the end of the day today, and it needs to be signed by your 5th, 7th, and 8th period teachers. So we'll leave after 4th. We'll be back for the end of the day. If you would bring $5 with you, I don't know if we can really stop off somewhere to eat. I haven't asked that question. So instead, I think I'm gonna get if it's cool with you guys, get 1 or 2 Subway platters, and then we'll have like a picnic in the field. That'd be so cute. What were you gonna say?
Pizza.
I mean, we can get pizza instead if you want.
Yes.
We can vote. Yeah, we can vote either pizza or.
Are we leaving like right at like
As close to as we possibly can.
like when I have time to change my shirt, because I could dress up from here, not dress up like.
Yeah, just go like to the bathroom and change before you come in.
I'm going back. But I think I get out.
So that's tomorrow. Like I said, bring $5. We'll either get pizza or Subway. So instead of like you going in and paying for your own lunch, we'll just collect $5, and then that will cover lunch. Wear an FFA shirt. Tomorrow is meeting day anyway, so even if you are not going to soil, you should wear an FFA shirt. That does count towards a grade, right? It's the easiest, probably easiest grade that you can get, just participation. Just like if you dress up for football or volleyball or something else, dress up for meeting days, just the same. That meeting will be at 2 o'clock tomorrow, so make sure you are there for that. It's so important that you are there. You guys will get checked in, you'll get an agenda, you'll just come down right from 8th period. We'll try to get you guys in as fast as you can.
How long do you think it's going to last?
Well, our meetings are typically like 30 to 40 minutes, right? Yeah, so you should be, I think it'd be good. Because usually we start, like when we had our 7 o'clock meetings, like you guys would gather at 7, that was signing you in. And then usually you guys were 7:30, 7:35 that you were heading to class last year, right? Like when we did them in the mornings. Ish. So it should be, it was never later than 7:40 that you guys were leaving. So it should be in that same time range. So with that being said, that's tomorrow. Please be there. Dues and forms, make sure that you're bringing those in. If you have them, I'll take them. Today, we have a committee meeting, right, for the fruit sale. So those people on that committee are Michael Rose, Isabel Crown, Caitlin Sherman, Michaela Osborne, Emily Arts, Oriana Wilson. Those are the juniors and seniors. So if you are on that committee, please be here for that. If you're not on that committee, but you are super excited about the fruit sale, you have great ideas, you want to join us for that, you are always welcome at those committee meetings. On Monday is when we're going to have our committee meeting for our Fight for a Cure event, and kind of start planning that powder puff too. If you want a job, let me know.
So what's the verdict? Oh yeah.
Well, there's not like a verdict yet.
Yeah.
But he said he was excited about it.
Yeah, he said he needed to talk to Mr. Petrie about it to see if we can still do like what we do for football, wear a mask, stay 6 feet, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it hasn't been shut down, but we also have not been given the thumbs up yet.
He said he wanted to do it. That's what.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the good success of the meeting. Some more info to come on that. Today, super exciting, it's National Teach Ag Day. Yay, so celebrating the Teach Ag profession, celebrating our organization and our ag classes.
Teach Ag.
September 7th. In honor of that, kind of, but also just a coincidence, I have a present for you.
Present?
I have a present. I know. I want to tell you about it. So these are presents. These are presents that I bought last year. I was going to give them to you before the banquet, and then like COVID. So I have them for you now, but I think it's really cool. So I'll tell you a little bit about it. The last year, 2019, was the 2019 was the 50th anniversary of women in FFA, right? So what year were women allowed in? 1969. So then by 2019, that was 50 years of women in the FFA. So when we were at National Convention last year, they had some of these 50-year in ag pins, and they were handing them out to people. They had like a limited supply, and so it's kind of cool. Some of our members got their hands on them. And so when I was ordering banquet supplies, they had these available for purchase, and I thought that'd be a really cool piece of history to give to our members and for them to have a piece of that. So I ordered enough that everybody in the chapter can have one if you want one. If you're like, wow, like I'm just gonna lose it and I don't really want it, then that's fine. I think no offense to that. But got these if you would like it, that I have it for you. Just putting this in your head, I think it's really cool. My dad has a like a wooden box upstairs in our house, and it has like a bunch of his old FFA pins. It has like appreciation awards he got from the fire department throughout the years, if it was like a years of service pin or a watch that they give him on like his 25th year, with just different little trinket stuff like that. So it's kind of cool that he held on to those things. When I went to National Convention as a member, they gave us an 85th commemorative coin. And so I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And I got home, I was like, Dad, look at this. And he went upstairs, he was like, well, they used to hand those out to everybody every year. And he had one from the 1976 National Convention. So just cool little kind of pieces of history that you guys can hold on to, that you can show your grandkids maybe someday and say, hey, I was in the FFA when it was the 50 years of women. So, or you can just put it on your jacket and do whatever you want. But I have these for you if you want it. Yeah, extra presents.
I just went out for her school, they had FFA for the guys, and then they had like
Get it.
my mom
Yeah, because usually we would have worn it at the May meeting. So, yeah. Questions about anything that I told you? Okay. Remind me, what did we talk about yesterday? Fill me in.
the first 3 days. Animals. Yeah, the first 3 days.
The first 3 days of an animal's life. How many things have we talked about? How many things are we going to talk about?
9.
9. How many things have we talked about?
5.
5. What 5 things have we talked about? Okay. Alexis, what is colostrum?
It is yellow.
Oh, there's 2 Alexis. Oh, sorry.
What? Yeah.
You go, yeah.
Yellow custard milk.
It's a yellowy custardy milk, right? That's so important for those animals to get in the first 24 hours. What else did we talk about? Hazel, you've had it for 3 seconds. This is why we can't have nice things.
She was like, oh shoot, and
Did you fetch it?
6th grade.
Did you get back? Okay.
Yeah.
What else did we learn about yesterday? What? Record keeping, making sure you keep records on your animals. What else?
Umbilical cord.
Umbilical cords, what do you do with them? You tie them and you dip them in iodine,
Yeah,
right?
that's what your belly button is.
Iodine.
Baby-legged babies. To take
What
your time.
else do we say back here?
Needle teeth.
Needle teeth. What do you have to do with them? You have to put them only in what species?
Pigs.
How many sets do they have?
4.
4 sets, so 8 teeth, right? 4 sets of 2. What else?
Spay-legged babies.
Spay-legged babies. What's spay-legged?
They walk weird.
Their hips are like all funky, right? One of these days I'm going to do this, and I don't have great traction on these shoes, and I'm really regretting it, and my legs are working really hard to get back to normal right now. Okay. But spay-legged, right? So what can we do to fix that if they're spay-legged? We can tape, or we can tie, and we can brace so that way they, right, for a few days until their legs are normal again. What else? Was there one other thing?
Free martins.
Free martins? What is a free martin?
The female of a twin out of cattle.
Yes. So the female of a twin in cattle, only if it's a twin with a boy, right? If it's a twin with another girl, it's fine. What does that make them? Sterile, which means that they can't reproduce, right? What else did we talk? Litter size. We talked about the litter sizes for all the animals. Yeah. And which teeth have the best milk? The back. The back. Yes. Yes. The back. The posterior teeth have the better milk. Okay. So the 6th thing that we're going to do to our animals in the first 3 days of life is we are going to, in some species, we're going to dock their tails. Okay? So this happens in hogs, sheep, and sometimes dairy cattle. Okay? So docking tails means that we're basically going to cut their tail back. So, fun fact, what do lamb's tails look like?
Really long. Like when they're they don't have them. They're tiny. They're like little buds.
They cut them.
Yeah.
Is that the one where they cut them off so they don't get all dirty?
Yes. So with lambs, if none of you have seen a baby lamb, right? When you guys see sheep, what do their tails usually look like?
No.
Nubs. Have little nubs, right? They got little nubs. When a lamb is born, though, their tail is almost as long, almost as long as their legs. Kind of comes down to like their hocks, right? So they actually have really long tails, like this long on little baby lambs. So the reason that lamb farmers would dock those tails back is because sheep produce what? Fur. That we call wool. They produce with the fur. So the lambs produce wool, right? Wool gets really thick on a sheep, so it can get really matty. And back in that nether region, right? Usually poop comes from that. And if you have a long tail and that kind of matted wool and you get poop up inside of there, it can get really dirty really quick. So a lot of sheep farmers will cut that back mostly for kind of reproductive health, because if you're going to breed an animal or just having that like waist up around the vulva, the anal cavity, right, all of that, you can get an infection really quick. And when you go to breed a female lamb, when the ram would like mount up, right, there's a very good possibility that they could push some of that waste and some of that like poop, if it was caught in their wool, into the vulva, which would cause a big infection. So that's why they cut those tails back really short, so that it's less likely that that's going to all mat up there. Okay, kind of just a cleanliness thing.
Are they required to do that? Like if you take it to the fair or something, is that required?
I don't think so, but it's really, really unlikely that you see a sheep with like a grown sheep with a long tail. So
I'm pretty
That
sure
was
like a
very
bird
cool.
equal until second long because there's like sort of like nutritional thing. Like they like use the tail or something.
I got you. Like they utilize that as a byproduct. So around here, it's really super common. It's kind of just like a normal practice with sheep farmers that when their lamb is born, usually they're going to band those tails off. And we'll talk about banding here in a minute, and that'll make sense.
Looks like a messed up dog.
What are you looking at? A sheep with a tail?
Oh
my
God!
Look at that one.
It is furry.
She said this thing is furry.
Okay. In hogs, all right. In hogs, they are also born with pretty long tails. Okay, a baby hog has probably a tail that's about that long, but they only stand about that tall. Okay. And we all know pig's tails is looking like what?
Curly Q.
Well, curly Q's right at the end. So those are also docked back. But the reason hog tails are docked back is a little bit different. There's some hog farmers, if you guys have seen this with the bears, kind of up to the preference of the farmer. Some of them will also cut them back to kind of just be a little nub. Okay. Some of them let them stay long enough that they kind of curl up. So the reason that you do that with hogs also partially is cleanliness, but their tails don't really hang, so that's not much as big of a deal. If they are long, they kind of curl up. So with hogs, it's more for the reason that way they don't get caught on things and that other hogs don't chew on them. So if you remember that hogs, we said the other day, are cannibalistic. That's why we have to cut their needle teeth. So if there's a really long tail and they could chew on that, right? They could get a hold of it, kind of like, I know you yank on your siblings' ponytails and stuff, right? Maybe.
Yeah, crap.
So, I don't know. My brother always used to just yank mine in the car, just to make
Brandon.
But right, even if it's just a playful nip, or if they do get caught and they get the taste of that blood, that's something that they can grab onto. And so more so, that's just for the safety of those animals.
I'm really scared of pigs now. Like, I'm so scared they're gonna like.
And dairy farmers, they don't like attack. They like meat. And dairy farmers, this is kind of up to the producer. It's not a common practice, but it's also not uncommon. So sometimes, if you guys ever remember when we watched, for some of you guys, you watched that video of the embryo transfer, where when the guy went to, so in embryo transfer, review this really quick, right? It's kind of like having a bunch of surrogate mothers for one cow. So you have one cow with really great genetics, you fertilize her eggs, you take them out, and then you can put those fertilized eggs in different recipient cows who maybe have really great reproductive traits, but don't have great like genetic traits that you want to duplicate. So you basically create a lot of surrogate mothers that are duplicating that one gene line. So with that, a lot of the times the farmers or the embryologists will give injections. An embryologist is basically like a specialized veterinarian that just does like embryo transfer style stuff. I went and worked with one at a dairy farm in Western Ohio in college for like a research study. So sometimes they'll take like colored electric tape and they'll put it around the tails of the cows that are synchronized in their heat cycles. So if they have embryos that are ready to implant, they'll say, okay, the cows with the yellow bands are in heat right now, and that way they kind of color code their cattle. So when it's time to just like breed them, they can just say, okay, the yellow ones are getting bred today, or whatever. So sometimes those tails are docked for that reproductive purpose. Most of the time they're docked because dairy farmers don't want to have to worry about, like the end of a cow's tail can get kind of hairy and bushy, right? So they don't want to worry about like that swishing in their face while they're milking, that getting dirty, and then being around the teats while they're trying to milk and keep that sanitized. So again, it's really just up to the dairy farmer. There's no pros or cons other than that, just like being out of your way. So when you do this though, you have to be really careful that you don't damage the muscle. If you cut too close back, you can really damage that muscle. And you can also cause a prolapse. Did we talk about what a prolapse is yesterday? It can be when they're giving birth. Sometimes it can just be, they have like a really hard poop, right? But the idea of a prolapse is when the end of the anal tract gets basically pushed out of the rear and they kind of like mushroom. In the back. So they've got like a red mushroom. Yeah, they've got like a red mushroom at the end of their butt because the end of their anal, like, that's a duct, right? That's kind of like your intestines, but similar, right? Like the tube. The end of that tube literally like gets inverted and pushed out the rear.
So you have to push that back in, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I'll show you a tool for that in a second. So you just have to be really careful that you don't cut too far back that you're damaging those muscles that can help hold like those tracks in place. Yeah. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. Cool. So the next one that we're going to do, this is where we're getting into show and tell. Let me show you that tool that's used for prolapse fixing. I have one back here. Whoa. So this I'm gonna come up here because I'm videotaping this for our friends. This is a prolapse tube. Okay, it's just a blue tube. It's hollow, right? Blue tube, hollow. It's got kind of a ridge right here. And so literally, this is one that is made for pigs. We have this at our farm because we've had pigs prolapse before, right? And so when they prolapse, like I said, that tube in their anal, right? That inverts and kind of turns, so it's like this. It turns inside out. It kind of bubbles like that, and it's coming out of their butt. So what you would do with this is you just basically take this tube, and if it's bubbled like this is the bubble, then when you push this tube in, it pulls that back in.
So
Okay.
what do you do with the tube? Like, do you pull it back out?
It can stay in. Eventually, they might naturally like pass it once it like kind of corrects itself. But then they can still poop through it, right? Because it's just a tube, but it's basically supporting that lining until it can like fix and heal and support itself.
That's a no unused one, right?
Yeah.
I just washed it really good.
Yeah.
So like you put it in and
Not
then
kidding.
so like you put it in and then it will come out when it's like healed, or like if you were to just put it in and pull it out, will it just come back out?
I don't know that.
Not that, but like
I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not 100% sure about that. I think you can keep them in, but I think they naturally, like, eventually once it heals, or at least you could take it out. You wouldn't take it out like the next day. You would have to stay in for like, but I don't know exactly. Cool. Well, for that too.
Yep.
I literally smelled right when you did that.
It's clean. I never used it.
I don't know. I smelled it.
Okay. The next thing that we are going to talk about is what you would do to your young male animals that you do not want to keep back for breeding. And that's what's called castration. Okay? So castration, what do they call it, guys? What's that word escaping my mind?
Get fixed.
Vasectomy. Thank you. Yes. Castration is a vasectomy for animals, right? It is the process of removing or disconnecting the testicles so that they cannot reproduce anymore. Okay. Penis stays intact. Testicles are removed. So the little swimmers go away. Okay. So castration is the surgical process of removing the testicles. Okay. If you want to keep a male back for breeding, obviously you don't want to do this. If you're having a market animal, it's really important that you do this. If you try to butcher, so in pigs it would be a boar, right? In lambs it would be a ram lamb. An intact male, if you butcher that and then you eat the meat is actually going to have a really metally, kind of an irony taste. So how many of you guys, if you've ever seen like a dog that's not castrated, sometimes they get a little bit more, they stay a little bit more aggressive, right? Because they have that like testosterone and stuff pumping through them. So with a lamb, with a bull, with a boar, whatever it might be, if you keep that, produce the hormones and the things that are producing in that body as that male matures, is the meat and the muscle is actually going to have more of a metally taste. So the quality of the meat and the taste of the meat is not going to be as good if you leave them intact. Also, as they age and develop, you have the possibility that if you leave them intact, your males could be breeding your females that are all in the same lot or all in the same pen. So it just takes away that possibility of them being able to reproduce. So it also takes away or prevents a metally taste in the meat. Okay. There are three main ways of castrating. Okay. The first is a scalpel. Scalpel. I think I said that right. The second is what we call banding. And the third one is what we call a burgizo. Okay, so this is where I told you we were gonna show and tell.
You know the little school thing that you put the rubber band on the end?
Yeah. Okay, so if we are looking back here, all right, and we're going to talk about all these possible processes. A scalpel is kind of mostly used in pigs. It could be used in goats and lambs too if you really wanted to, but pigs, since their testicles kind of come out the rear end of them, like all your other animals, they kind of hang from the bottom, right? Since they come from the rear, when you use a scalpel, just like this, all right, basically you would do it when they're very young, within a couple weeks. A lot of people will do it in the first 3 days, but you've got a little bit longer of a window on that. So basically you're gonna, in the rear where they would be, you just do a slit, okay? 2 small little 1/4 to 1/2 inch incisions. It kind of, this is not really bad, but like a pimple, right? If you just kind of squeeze, the 2 testicles will come out those incisions, and then you just.
This is for what?
You put on the skin. After that,
You would, well, it would be attached, right? There's the vas deferens, or the epididymis, right? If you guys remember learning about that, the epididymises that are connecting them to the reproductive tract. So you would pop them out of those incisions and then just slice those epididymises, which are tiny at that point, right? They're very undeveloped.
You can barely even paint
At that age, they're not going to really feel it that much. So it's just kind of like if you've ever had your finger pricked for blood, it's kind of the same thing. They just when you slice and dice, they kind of like.
I know it does hurt.
And then,
I hate getting my.
How do you keep them from like moving?
I start.
a lot of times, so I used to have to help my dad with this, right? Because when we had a fair to finish operation, so we would have like 150 pigs. We'd have like 8 or so litters at a time, and so we'd be moving pigs up to the finishing barn, and we would castrate them before I moved them. So a lot of times when you're handling baby pigs, people will pick them up by their rear legs. It doesn't hurt them at all to hold them that way. And basically what it does is it just kind of calms them. It's kind of like when you carry your rabbits and put their eyes in your arms. I don't want to say it paralyzes them, but just them being in that position kind of hanging upside down, they're just like kind of chill. Or sometimes if you try to hold them like a baby, they're like wiggling and all that stuff.
Oh my god.
So while you do that, what's that?
Is that why so I have my rabbits in my laundry basket and then I have like a towel and I just like they would not stop trying to get out.
Yeah.
So I just put the towel like over it.
Yeah,
And they
and
would not
they were
move.
cool.
They're like I thought they were dead.
So
okay.
when you pick them up by their rear legs, if you hold them, they'll be kind of still. So we used to hold them by their rear legs and kind of put like their body in between our knees, and then just like flip, pop, pop.
Flip, pop, pop.
Yeah. So you can do it when you get to the facts of it, you can do it pretty quick. And when you do it young enough, that that pain piece isn't there. But then we would use a purple substance. It's called Bloodstock. And it's basically just like you just spray it purple, and it just kind of helps keep it from bleeding. Yeah.
Isn't that like it's connected to the body?
Correct.
Like the reproductive system.
Correct.
You cut it off after it's like
Yeah, I don't really know how to draw a picture of this,
Well-
but like, so if you have like the butt of the pig, right? So you would put a small incision here, and you would pop. The testicles aren't going to be bigger than like that.
Oh.
Okay, so they just kind of pop out the back, and then the epididymises are the tubes that are connecting that. So you would just, and those are like super fine, like a piece of string at that point. So you just slice both of those just real quick, and it's not even. I mean, you're not sitting there like sawing at it, right? It's just a.
For some reason I thought they were this big.
I think we used to put it on like our compost pile.
I was like thinking like big.
Yeah.
So scalpel is process number 1. Okay. Castration. Process number 2 is what we call banding. Okay. and it's very sturdy. So unlike a rubber band that you can just like grab and stretch, these don't stretch very well. So this is for a goat or a sheep, okay? The ones for cattle are a little bit larger usually, but this is what we call a banding tool. So basically what you do when you go to band a sheep or cattle or goat, okay, is you would put this rubber band on the tool like that. Okay, you see how that's connected?
Right.
And then when you squeeze this,
Oh, wow.
it stretches it for you. Okay, which if you saw with my hands, I was pulling pretty hard and I couldn't get it to stretch that much. So when you squeeze this, it stretches it out. You would put the scrotum, the sac, right through that, and then when you close this again, it would roll off, and it would stay around like the top of the scrotum. So basically, what that's going to do is it's going to cut off the blood supply, and eventually, in about 2 weeks, the scrotum would shrivel up and it would just fall off, and you just kind of find it in there again.
Ew.
Okay.
Worse.
Okay, this is really bad, but every time I do this, I can just watch the boys' faces. Okay. Those eyes are all the boys.
Like what?
So this is a Vertizo. When we talk about that, it says it right there. If you're like ever identifying tools, it honestly has a wrist placement for you if you need it, kind of give you leverage. So basically, this is a giant clamp, and Michael feel the inside edges of that. Is it sharp? It's very blunt, right? So it's very flat. If you guys feel kind of on there, it's very flat. It's not sharp at all. Okay, I don't know if right now that's making you guys feel better or worse.
Like if it was sharp, it'd be faster.
So this is not a scalpel, and this. I'll bring it around to you guys. This is not a scalpel, and it's not a bander. But how many of you guys have ever heard of the idea of like closing off a vein, like pinching shut a vein? Okay. So sorry, I'm not laughing. So the idea of this is, like we said, the scrotal sac kind of like hangs down, right? So you can't do this on young pigs because they haven't popped out yet. But instead of banding, this is like a one-time thing. So what you would do is you would put this up over the scrotum, right? So that would kind of be like in here. And where the sac hangs down from the body is where those veins and those epididymises are coming down from the body.
And you say they're older at this point?
They're within like the first month.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually. So basically what you do is you would put this by those veins, right, which is kind of the one little thing like your finger kind of hanging down. And when you close this, okay, it closes like that, but listen.
Oh.
So it tightens. It tightens, like when you pull it, and then it really tightens and puts pressure on. So you're not cutting anything off, okay? Nothing is falling off at that point. But what you're doing is you're clamping it, you're kind of sealing closed those veins and those, like the tubes that would carry the semen and the sperm, right? And so when you unleash it, you put enough pressure on it that you permanently kind of closed those veins, and it does the same thing as a band. You're just not using a band. So you're kind of, what is the word for that? It's not like cauterizing, but it's kind of that idea, right? Where you're closing it, and then it's gonna close those veins permanently. So eventually the blood can't flow past that. And again, they would just shrivel up and kind of fall off.
Joe, wouldn't that stuff to be used on you?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, now
Here,
we
you wanna make a clamp?
Okay, sure for you, Joe.
Clamp. Ooh.
I could probably.
Just like
So if you guys feel in here, if you guys want to feel it, it's not sharp at all. You guys can feel it either side. It's
really like listening to this.
Like it's
None
very.
of them are like fascinating. It's all like
Long and painful.
The banding and the scalpel are both pretty fascinating. I mean, the scalpel, like I said, is just kind of like pricking your finger because there is such thin skin at that point too.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, that is.
Well,
Well,
there's only.
Except they didn't fit her. I would be scared like right So again, the idea of the Bernizo is not that you're cutting it off. The idea of the Bernizo is that you're closing those veins. So you're clamping shut. Anybody else want to try and make this like close?
Michael, you like
Imagine that.
Do you guys have questions about the forms of castration?
Which one hurts less?
Okay. Hey guys, so Beth just asked which one hurts less. I would say probably the banding, because what that's going to do is it's really just going to turn numb. It's like if you ever try to put a rubber band really tight around your finger, eventually your finger kind of turns blue and starts getting numb. So that's what's like happening down there for him. Okay. So that would just be like a weird sensation, right? It's not really going to be a pain. This they would probably jump when you plant it, but then otherwise it's the same thing. You're not cutting or actually making any type of incision with it. Granted, I don't know. Like, and again, this is the bander, right? The scalpel, I would imagine, would have the initial pain, right? The like, just like I said, it's like pricking your finger, so it's not like a huge, like you're doing an open surgery or anything on it. But that would probably have the prick pain, but then after that, it's done and over with. So it's like an instant, as opposed to a longer term. That's cool?
Yeah.
Also, if you guys have never seen, I'll just pull this out really quick. Like a milking machine.
Oh, is that the milk thing? Oh, yeah.
So we have those hanging out, and then there's two more. This one's kind of like these two are hang off there as well. And that's if you want to pass this around. That's what like. So what Michael has right now is he just has one of the milkers off of this. So this is what would hang down off the machine, right? And then these all kind of hang from the different areas, and you literally when you go up to the cow, you just like they have a vacuum in them, and so you just like and they go on, and then these sit there and like milk the cow for you. So it's got like the suction thing up at the top.
I love it.
You just put that thing in my face. Oh, this here. I'll show you. When we talk about docking tails, this is what would be used to like dock a lamb's tail. So this is, it's not really sharp, but that is what you would put like the lamb's tail, and then you go like that, and it would dock it off.
Pretty much.
What is that? This is dock a lamb's tail. Yeah, curved so the tail fits in. But if you could just see it. Oh, we do have tweezers. Somebody was asking me for tweezers the other day. But these were probably used on animals.
On his mouth?
Yeah, do it.
Oh my god. Yeah. I don't know.
You're right. Oh, this is Philip's corona.
I thought you were talking about his mouth. It looks like a roll on his mouth.
The stuff you find. Other things that I want to show you really quick just while I'm in here, and then we'll move on to the next thing. If you guys have never seen, and we'll talk about this later, this is a pig water nipple. Okay, so in a pig barn, the way that pigs drink, this would be connected to like a water spout, right? And it could be something that hangs, could be something that comes out of the wall. And so it's really cool because when you push down, kind of like a drinking fountain, when you guys push the button, the water comes out. When when they push down on this with their mouth, water comes out of that little spout. So it's kind of a cool way for them to suck on that and get their water. That's what's used in like commercial hog barns. These, again, this doesn't have a lot to do for right now, but this is, you guys have all seen bowl rings, like on their nose. This is a hog ring. So it's very similar, but it's kind of like a U-shaped nail. Okay, they come in a box like this. This is old.
Anybody want to get their nose pierced?
Yeah.
Why did they do that? Why did they put that one on?
That's good.
So it's kind of in bowls. In bowls, they put a ring on their nose, and they would actually attach like the lead.
Oh God, that's horrible.
In bowls, they put the ring in their nose. So when they're leading them, they actually put a clamp, like a clip on that. They don't lead them just by that. Like they would have it on their halter, but the halter would attach to the bull ring because sometimes they can be a little bit more aggressive. So having that control, it's like for some of you guys that have nose rings, it's not like yanking it out, but there would be a little bit of pressure on that. So it's kind of like when your mom takes you by the ear and drags you around, you're like, yes, ma'am, right? Similar thing is when they've got you by the nose, you're like, okay, you know. With pigs, they more so would put these in to prevent them from rooting in the soil. Because if you've got that really sensitive thing at the end of your nose and you go to root, it hurts and then you stop.
How big is an actual bull ring? Is it like that size or is it like
No, it would be,
in like movies when they always have like the bull rings and they're so big?
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I mean, on a cartoon, they're probably over exaggerated.
Yeah, like they're really big.
They'd probably be like that big.
Okay. So they're not like big.
Movies got big noses.
Yeah.
I thought you said somebody's name and then I finally understood.
One time me and Megan were at the zoo at the place like cleaner thing and you like you clean your car with a vacuum. And I was just thinking of this because of that and then it just reminded me of her. And she goes, don't vacuum on my chapstick. I said, I was like, that's right, vacuum on my chapstick. And then my baby just looked at the vacuum picture from them.
Okay, the next thing that we are going to talk about briefly.
Why did you go to bed at 3?
Okay, we'll move on to ID and medications tomorrow.
You want this back?
Yeah.